as we continue the topic of digital transformation, our panelists will have their enterprise and how digital transformation has and it will change their businesses as well. So as I call panelists to come over on the stage, John Gigwick, Senior Vice President and the Chief Information Officer for Keurig, Dr. Pepper. Anurag Gupta, Chief Information Officer for Signature Aviation, and Joe Longo, Senior Vice President, Chief Information Officer for the Parkland Health and Hospital Systems. Thank you for coming. Absolutely. Leading the conversation is our moderator, Arun Balasubramaniam, Senior Vice President of Redis. Arun is a seasoned telecom executive with over 26 years of experience in technology, development, sales, marketing, and business devices. He has a strong background in wireless networks, wireless devices, wireline networks, and OSS, BSS systems. In his current role at Redis, he is responsible for establishing and growing the digital network services and helping global telecom operators achieve digital transformation and become true digital. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. That was an amazing session. You know, for most of the businesses, the reason why the telecom always takes a precedence is connectivity is like oxygen for the growth. So, with that said, I just want a quick, small introduction to Radisys. Radisys is an almost 30-plus-year-old company, offshoot of Intel, currently part of the Reliance Industries Group. So many of you know the Reliance Jio Platforms, which is the now holding company. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Jio Platforms. And you know, many of you know that Jio, when it was launched its service in 2016, has made a major impact in the country in terms of digital transformation. The famous Mary Meeker report talks about how the before Jio and after Jio, how when somewhere down in the lane or 70, 80 in terms of internet usage, India is now #2 in terms of total number of people on the internet. With that said and done, we have a phenomenal, esteemed panel. And you know, before pandemic, everybody today being a digital tsunami as a major topic, before pandemic, there was a good amount of momentum with respect to digital. Everybody was trying to go into cloud, customer experience, data, cryptocurrencies, blockchain. But then the pandemic hit, and you know, as famously Satya Nadella said, you know, almost a decade of progress happened in a few months, right? But then the war happened, supply chain disruptions, travel restrictions. All of that is our backdrop for today's discussion. With that, you know, the way I want to conduct is that let's first start with each one of the esteemed panelists, give their a quick overview of their organization and the digital you know, progress that they have made in the few years or few months, and then we can go into the questions. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? So Anurag Gupta here. I'm the CIO of Signature Aviation. So Signature Aviation is the world's largest operator of fixed-base operations. So if you think about private jets and the airports that feed them, so we own about 210 in the world, which is the largest compared to the next competitor, which is Atlantic, which is about 100. We own 13 million square foot of real estate space. We do about 1.3 million flights every year. And we offer terminal, ramp, fuel, and other services like janitorial and catering services, right? And as a business, we were acquired in a private transaction by consortium last year with Cascade, GIP, and Blackstone for about $5 billion. So digital for us is a relatively new concept. So if you think about our customer, we are talking about a very high net worth customer, people who have $70 million worth of jet. And they're not looking for a luxurious experience, they're looking for a frictionless experience, right? These are the people who come from Ritz-Carltons of the world, the Waldorf Astorias of the world, and when they land into our private jet airport, our point of sale doesn't work, right? So digital experience, let alone if we can get basic things to work, that itself is a feat. But as we talked about digital, the big thing for us is how do we give the customer a frictionless experience? Number two, we use fueling big time, right? So how do we do e-tickets, e-fuels? The other big thing is we have 5 big customers that account for 30 to 40% of the revenue, NetJets, Wheels Up, VistaJets, but we have a long tail of 50,000 customers, and we can't have a sales force that goes behind them. So how do we make sure we can use digital platforms for them? And the last one is, if you're in the base, how do you keep your employee workforce safe, right? These are the people in the middle of the ramp, in the middle of the hangar. How do you do optimization on the safety and other places? So we'll talk more about that, but that's just a brief introduction. Over to you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Joe Longo. I'm the CIO of Parkland Health. If you drove to this location, there's a high likelihood you passed a really large hospital. That's us. We're one of the largest public health systems in the country. We're a safety net hospital. If you don't know what that means we don't turn folks away. So we're caring for the neediest folks in the population as well. We're also a large teaching hospital. So providers and even nursing staff, they come through our facilities to learn their craft. So when you're talking about the digital tsunami, obviously for us in healthcare and anybody else in healthcare out there, we got hit pretty hard. And absolutely clinicians, nursing, patients that could no longer get the care that they need in the traditional manner. It was a rough 2 years. The silver lining was some of our efforts around telehealth, which was mentioned earlier. That was a slow trickle. All of a sudden became the norm. There was no other choice. And we mulled through some of that data, and it's surprising who the top adopters were for some of our more digital health tools. You would think, younger folks that grew up with a mobile phone in their hand, but it was actually 50 plus was the biggest adopters of telehealth and some of the other digital experiences we had. So that really told us something. So now we're, knock on wood, post-COVID-ish. We've really doubled down on our digital strategy. Again, our core of what we do and who we are is to facilitate health equity, especially to those populations that have barriers to get their health. So digital for us is another avenue to get to services, health services that people really need, but they can overcome social determinants of health like transportation issues, childcare issues, access to fresh foods. These are things that Parkland, we're leveraging technology and the digital front door, and it's a little bit different than most hospitals use the digital front door, where most hospitals are looking to gain market share. We're looking to break down the barriers to create more health equity, to get to the populations that otherwise wouldn't follow up with outpatient visits, wouldn't easily get to the hospital when there's early indications of problems. So we're really excited about the digital tsunami, the gains that were kind of a symptom of COVID and a necessity, and we're really looking to, not to be too on the nose, but ride that wave to continue to develop some of those digital front door services and make sure that people have multiple options to get their care and stay healthy and stay out of our main hospital, because if you're there, that's the most acute place you can be cared for. We want to keep people out of the hospital, healthy, and with their families.
So here, one more benefit of the pandemic is reducing the digital divide.
Hi, everybody. John Gigrich. I'm with Keurig Dr. Pepper. I lead the IT function there. Keurig Dr. Pepper, we're probably kind of a curious company when you think about it, because We resulted from the merger of Keurig Green Mountain Coffee and Dr. Pepper Snapple Group back in 2018. In fact, I took over this role 6 months before that deal closed, which was a little nerve-wracking, by the way. I accepted the job and the deal hadn't even been announced yet. So while I was in my notice period, I was actually, the deal came through and I was like wondering if I still had a job or not, but it's all worked out. So we have tried to position ourselves, we like to refer to ourselves as a modern beverage company, and so our goal is to have a beverage for every occasion. So we have our whole hot portfolio, which came from the Keurig Green Mountain side, which includes the coffee brewer, as well as 75 odd coffee brands, that some of which we own, some of which we license. And then we have our whole cold beverage portfolio, which is a collection of water, juices, teas, etc., carbonated soft drinks as well. And again, we have 75 to 80 brands there and have a very large distribution network for that. We have about 27,000 employees, and those employees are spread across Canada, US, and Mexico. Our business is exclusively today is in Canada, US, and Mexico. We have operations elsewhere in the world, but our selling activities are here in the US and Canada, Mex. Digital for us, it's been interesting. Over the last couple of years, our focus has been squarely on merging the two companies together. And that's been a monumental effort, because these were, you know, a $4 billion and change company and a $5 billion and change company coming together, and in quite distinct ways to go to market, quite distinct ways of operating as a business. And so we've been very focused on how do we use the opportunity. Normally you're looking like, how do I just get everybody on the same system? We've taken this to look at ways to transform while we're getting everybody to the same system. You know, we're 3.5, well, we're nearly 4 years into that process. We're still working our way through it. You know, we've done a lot on the digital front over the years. You know, we have a very large direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. So we have Keurig.com and Keurig.ca, which is for Canada. Those two sites together do about $500 million a year in revenue, direct to consumers, so we bypass the retailers with that. We have a whole bunch of things when we look at how we sell cold beverages. We've developed our own, we built from scratch ourselves the applications that our field sales force uses on a day-to-day basis. Those are iOS-based applications that use cellular, unfortunately not Verizon, it was just up here, but you know, that is one of our, you know, flagship offerings is we call that application My Day. So we're continuing down the path. We've moved to the cloud. We're doing a whole bunch of other things as well, and I could keep going, but I'll pass it back to you.
As you can see, you have a varied businesses here on the stage, but ultimately everything comes to the customer experience, yes, or the patient experience. So starting with how did you employ digital or digitalization principles to improve your customer experience? We'll start with you and then we can.
Yeah, so I think if you think about the customer at a signature for us, there are multiple levels of customers. One is the pilot, which has a decision right on which airport to land. Then you have the corporate travel departments, which own like Walmart or some bigger companies. Then you have VistaJet and NetJets, which own 1,000 private jets, so they are another customer. So for us, the big thing is, when we were taken private, we went from X number of FBOs to 200 plus, which means how do we transition from a collection of FBOs to a network effect? What I mean by that is, we have a customer that starts in Greece, goes to Luton, England, goes to Teterboro in New York, comes to Dallas, and today we cannot recognize that it's the same customer. We have the tail number, but we cannot pinpoint it's the same customer. So we are creating a digital platform where we can link their itinerary, like what American Airlines does. We can know their preferences. Are they vegetarian? What type of services do they need? And then in terms of billing, instead of giving them emails of invoices, we can surface them to the portal so that they can do a self-service. So what that means is when the customer lands, they have less than 5 minutes to transition from the airport. So unlike a DFW airport where the customer actually maybe wants to be in the airport, for us the victory is if the customer doesn't even see the airport, right? Staying at the airport is not a sign of pride. It's actually a negative customer experience. So I think those are some of the ways in which we are trying to reduce customer friction.
Interesting. FBO, meaning fixed base operators.
Yes.
A lot of them,
Yeah.
Joe?
Sure. I like listening to folks in other industries outside of healthcare because, quite frankly, I think travel, I think retail, they're much more advanced in the customer experience, leveraging digital. I think we're in healthcare are emerging. So moral of the story is we've got some ways to go, but we've made up a lot of ground more recently. Would I say I'm on par with retail experience? Not quite. I think folks in the audience that have had appointments or any other experience with their healthcare system, things have gotten a little bit better leveraging digital tools, but we've got some ways to go, and this is kind of counterintuitive. You know, one of our biggest focuses, like I said, is health equity. We actually have to look at a lot of analytics at our populations to understand why they're different and understand what's preventing them from a smooth experience to get into the services that they need with some type of integrated experience. So to get to equity, you've got to really understand the differences. So that's what we're doing is, like I said earlier, we've implemented a bunch of digital tools, which before the pandemic was kind of a trickle with the uptake. During the pandemic, it was that tsunami. The next stages that we're going is we're looking at those experiences like the check-in process when you get to where you're going, the patient that has multiple appointments and it feels like siloed experiences, getting that all synchronized. Understanding when you can engage digitally versus engage in our brick and mortar services, or intervene in either one of them, or go from experience to experience. Those are some of the things that we are dabbling in right now, and we're working with a lot of focus groups in our different populations. But really what we're trying to look at is where are those experiences getting better and where are we actually having more engagement, especially in the populations that have been generally marginalized. And not to too much tie in a totally different but related topic, you know, we heard earlier about Verizon 5G. One of our biggest challenges and barriers to really adopt the digital tools and advance that in the most needed areas is overcoming the digital deserts. And I'm talking about this area. You know, we are serving Dallas County, and there's whole portions of our county that don't have stable access to broadband. Now that's a big challenge when I'm trying to engage folks in those areas. So we have some infrastructure challenges that's a little bit beyond the typical ownership of a health system, but it really behooves us to get out there and try to break down those barriers so we can have folks in those areas leverage some of these new tool sets.
Absolutely. I think digital desert is a major issue in a lot of countries.
Yes. So when so customer experience for us, so I should be clear, we think we have kind of two ends of customer experience. So we have consumers who are buying our products, and then we have our customers who are typically retailers who are then putting it on the shelf and selling the products. And so as we think about those two, it's two different sets of experiences and two separate sets of goals that we have with them. With consumers, it's all about how do we get the messaging right for our products, and so how do we convince them that I need to go buy a Diet Dr. Pepper, or I need to go buy a Keurig brewer and coffee that goes with it. And so it's very much focused on the digital marketing side of things and how we get that messaging out. That's through digital ads that you would see on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media platforms, those sorts of things. And in pursuit of the consumer, last year, I think, I lose track with COVID, like 20 and 21 are kind of a blur. So in the last 2 years, we took a decision to bring all of our ad agency work in-house. And so we have our own in-house agency now. It's called Liquid Sunshine. which is the name is actually from an ad that appeared back in the 50s. They found it and they're like, hey, that's a good moniker for our ad agency. So we have our own in-house designers, copywriters, producers for all these ads. So that's the consumer side of things. On the customer side of things, with retailers, it's really about how do we make it easy for them to do business with us, right? We want to take friction. It's very, very similar to what you were saying about Signature. It's like, how do I take friction out of the process with them? Because at the end of the day, the retailer's goal is how do I make maximum revenue and profit off the products on their shelves? And they want to stock whatever's going to move quickly, and they want to stock whatever's going to earn them the largest profit. And so our tools there really are focused on how do we provide information back to them so that they can make better decisions and hopefully buy more of our products and put more of ours on the shelves. So when you look at things we've done in the last year to 18 months, we now have technology that our reps are able to carry in the field. And if they take a picture, like if they're in a convenience store and they take a picture of the coolers where all the sodas and waters are, an AI will analyze the set and provide a report back to us like, is that the right set for that? Do we have good placement? Is it where we expect to be in there? And that's all done by machine versus a person looking at it. And then we can start to judge, are we doing well in that market? Not. Is that particular sales rep doing a good job or not? And so there's a whole range of tools, but that's probably the most recent one that we've put in.
Actually, probably if one of the AT&T or one of them, or both of them have a solution for put a camera in the coolers, automatically analyzing it.
Yes. In our case, we're taking them. The reps all carry iPads and iPhones, and they're taking the photo through this application, and then the application does the work for us on it. So yeah.
So starting with Joe, from a digital transformation needs, what is your top priority from your organization?
Yeah. So we're transitioning from the onslaught of COVID, where we had to do a lot of things very rapidly. We stood up testing sites in former parking lots. We were working with the health department to really add some analytics. So there was a lot of rapid, how do we get our arms around the interventions to either test or vaccinate the population. Now we've shifted to how do we take some of the gains of where we went and where we came from with digital, and how do we expand into the communities. So we're going past the traditional four walls of care. So we have 40 some odd outpatient locations. We have one of the largest physical hospitals in the country, but how do we get to folks before they need to be admitted into a hospital? So the answer is we're getting out to health fairs. We're making partnerships in the communities that are performing the worst from a health index perspective. We're leveraging AI and predictive analytics to understand, leveraging a lot of public data to show who's at highest risk when we have new waves of infection. We understand which zip codes have the highest rate of late-stage breast cancer diagnosis. And that's what's really guiding us to put a 3D tomography unit on a van, drive it to that zip code, and start doing preventative imaging. So a lot of what we're focusing on is what can we do in terms of use of data and use of digital to work outside the four walls of the traditional care facilities and get to people to diagnose chronic disease earlier and get to intervention, break down barriers to those chronic diseases, and make sure that they're staying healthy in those communities before they even need to come to us. So it's a little bit different than typical business models where you're trying to attract more business. We're trying to get out to more people and prevent them from being chronic or acute patients of ours. So that's the biggest thing we're working on. It's not a small task. It's not one or two use cases or technologies. It's kind of a whole ecosystem that we're building based off a strategy of being okay to go outside our normal four walls.
That must be truly rewarding for them.
Yeah,
very.
Yeah.
John, you want to add?
Yeah, it's not selling soda. So a couple things come to mind for me as I think about what's important to us we've been in process over the last couple of years, as I said, of merging the companies together and trying to simultaneously transform. That's included, we committed to Google Cloud Platform. We've been moving things to Google Cloud, to move things to the cloud. The majority of our processing now is on Google Cloud. All of the direct-to-consumer business all runs on Google Cloud, which gives us this unbelievable ability. This time of year, Keurig.com does a fine business this time of year, but Q4, when we hit Black Friday and Cyber Monday, it goes crazy. So we go, just to give you a reference point, like it's 5-6 servers worth of processing now. In fourth quarter, it's like 60 servers worth of processing. And those aren't the exact numbers for obvious reasons, but I'm trying to give you a proportional view of it. And for us to do that, if we were not in the cloud, would be incredibly hard to do. We would have to own 60 servers. I don't own 60 servers. I don't pay for 60 servers. I pay for, if I need 5 now, I'm paying for 5 now. And then when the wave hits in Q4, we're able to ramp automatically. It has trigger points built in that automatically just goes, give me another server, give me another server, give me another server. And the second it doesn't need it, it has it in reverse and starts knocking them off. So we've been very happy with that. And I think we have a lot more work to do there over time to optimize how we use the cloud. We're doing it really well for e-commerce. We've got work to do elsewhere. There's a number of things that we need to do in how we run the IT organization that are directly tied to digital transformation as well. So we're going to be moving ourselves to an agile operating model, which is going to give us the ability to adapt and move more quickly and join us tighter to our business colleagues. And so the hope there is that we can get to solutions faster, we can get to more specific solutions and not build a bunch of extraneous parts and pieces to it, lost my train of thought, that aren't going to be needed. And then the last thing is we've invested a lot of money over the last couple of years in data and analytics. And we've implemented a tool called Snowflake for those that are in the industry. It's a leading data lake tool. And we've created what we call our Strategic Insights Platform. And the moniker is SIP, which goes along great with our beverage mode. So it makes it easy for people to remember. But we have started building out our data assets on that. And it's giving us the ability to build predictive models. It's giving us deeper insights to how our business is performing. But there's so much more we need to do there. And I think that for a lot of companies, it's really the key to the puzzle is really data and analytics and being able to exploit insights that are going to allow you to run, whether it's how do I attract more customers, but it's also how do I make things run more efficiently? How do I make sure I have the right amount of supplies, that I have my supply chain optimized, all of those things.
So cloud,
data analytics, and an agile operating model.
Agile operating model.
Yeah.
I love this kind of acronyms like SIP or BOG, right?
Yeah.
The meaningful acronyms.
Yes.
So starting with you,
sure.
If you had to name one technology out of the digital bouquet of available technology, what made the major impact in your digital transformation?
Well, I would have to say our SIP system is really a key piece. It's taken us a couple of years to get it installed, and as I said, to get the data into the tool, which is not just building a pipe and having it dumped there. You have to rationalize the data to get it in a state that is going to be usable not only for the use case that you're going after immediately, but how can I have it available for multiple use cases that I might not even know what they are in the future. And so this is going to be critical to our business long term. I mean, if you look at anybody across the consumer products industry, everybody is going really deep with analytics. It is the thing that is going to allow us to differentiate with those consumers and customers. And yeah, to me, that's the number one for me.
Yeah, I don't think you'll like my answer because it's not one. The biggest thing we relied on wasn't technology at all. It was our people, especially in the last 2 years. But from a technology perspective, I would agree with you. A lot of the basis of, okay, we're rapidly getting a lot of problems. How do we even approach starting to solve them? And we started with data. You know, where are the problems? What's the closest to the root cause? And then we pulled on, you know, for in my industry, Epic. Epic is the big EMR platform. They're a major partner for us. They helped us rapidly build different sites in different areas. I could also say similar for some of our networking backbone. You know, we popped open spots that wasn't our real estate and wasn't even buildings most of the time. But it started with analytics. We even shared some of our analytics capabilities with the surrounding public health agencies, and we really, here in the Dallas area, we really were able to stay a little bit ahead, if that's even, you know, okay to say, of how to understand what's going on in our area, especially during the pandemic, and the quickest way to roll out to as many people that are the most needy. So not exactly one technology, but definitely starting with the data and then going into the different tool sets, but it's the people that really ran it all and put it together.
I would say the Zoom, the teledoc and video, that's, for me at least personally, I engage a lot more now on teledoc and Zoom conference.
That's one tool in the tool belt, definitely. You know, a lot of people think telehealth, but when we look at it, that's a means, that's a portal. There's a lot more that goes into it to make it a meaningful encounter and connect the dots for people staying healthy or being healthy or getting to health. So it's tough to pinpoint one particular technology for us.
So we are a Microsoft shop, and I would say we believe in the power of Microsoft, especially to give you examples. The Microsoft Azure Cloud has been a game changer for us. You know, we are a team of 65 people in IT, but we count heavily on Microsoft toolset. The other thing, you know, we stood up a Databricks platform in less than 2 weeks. Going with our own platforms and other things would have taken months, for example. The other inspiration I get from Microsoft is, if we look at Microsoft, the way they have transformed their own company gives us a lot of confidence that when we buy a Microsoft E5 license or their tool set, we are buying a platform. Like, you know, now security is an inbuilt feature, so instead of going to 30 different vendors, Microsoft, I give them the kudos for changing the game of this whole world. And the other two we count on our Salesforce and ServiceNow. And I think the trend we are seeing is, while we can go one-off in every direction, for a company of our size, it's also the maintenance cost, it's the support cost. And Microsoft does so many things so well, in addition to not selling their own services that well, that they have become a partner of choice for us. That's a big thing for us.
So coming to more non-technology software aspects, from an organization perspective, what has been the organizational challenges with respect to digital transformation?
Yeah, I'll mention a few, and I'm sure we've all gone through. So I think we talk about digital like it's an end. I truly feel digital is a means to an end. So we have to start from the use cases that Joe, you talked about. So one is, what we have realized is, you know, unlike in the past where we did a lot of due diligence in IT in the business to build up a business case, now in digital work, what we say is the upside is good enough, and even if the cost double, the margin is good enough, so let's get started. Time is critical more than perfection. The second one that we've talked about is we have to heavily trust and count on our partners. I think the traditional IT mindset is we'll build our own 60 servers, we know the game in town. So we try to do all the things internally, and now we count heavily on our partners. The third one is, how do we not shoot for perfection? I think that's the killer thing for IT is we always feel that what will the customer react if there are bugs? You know, iOS comes out, it has some bugs, but we get them fixed and we are all good with it. But somehow in enterprise IT, we always feel perfection. The last one I would say is, I think the word previously used was audacious, right? I think we have to be very ambitious in what we do. Somehow we get constrained by people, dollars, timelines. We need to say we are going to move there. And the last one I would say is, I think we have to be very intellectually curious. What I mean by that is, as a CIO, I learned so much from working at our CMO. So our SVP of marketing used to run Advantage program. I learned so much by being a sponge on the wall there to learn from what they have to tell us versus we being the IT know-it-all. So I think if we can be intellectually curious and humble, we will learn so much from them that we can do some good work there. So those are the cultural shifts or the mindset shifts we have seen.
Removing the silos.
Well, removing the silos and also us acknowledging that we don't know it all. Our partners can contribute, our business people can contribute, and we are an enabler versus we are the house of Dr. No, right? So I think if we can make that mindset shift, that's a huge one.
John, especially on the digital supply chain control towers.
Yes, yes.
Because supply chain is everything for your business.
Supply chain is everything to us, yes. And pretty much everybody in the food and beverage industry right now is having challenges around supply chain. And it's coming from multiple fronts. First off is that over the last 2 years, for our products, we've seen unprecedented demand for our products. And so if you were to look at our performance over this period of time, you would see, a much higher increase in sales than usual. If I take our Keurig brewers, for example, every year we sell between 8 and 10 million brewers. Of those, 2 million typically are new households who are new to the Keurig system. In 20 and in 21, we sold 3 million new households. So we had more, so we are moving more products. So that's the first driver of complicating the supply chain, like we're moving more volume through this system than what we originally planned. Then you throw in all the challenges that have come with availability of product, and that's come in many forms. For us, in 20 and 21, it's kind of softened a bit now, was availability, believe it or not, of aluminum cans was a huge problem for us. And the driver for that was that many restaurants and bars closed. And so, especially on the beer side of things, most beer was sold in kegs to restaurants and bars. Now it was mostly being sold for home consumption, so it was going to cans and bottles. So they were using more cans than they originally planned. And then we had much higher demand for our products, and so we're using more cans. And back in 20, we used 600 million more cans than we originally planned for the year. And so that's not something you can go down to the corner market and just pick up. And the suppliers of those cans, that's not. This is heavy industry, right, that makes aluminum cans. So this is not stood up in 6 months. It takes multiple years typically to build a facility that's going to flatten aluminum and make it into aluminum cans. And so there's no short-term remedy for this. And so it was importing, the Western Hemisphere was sold out. Not just US, Mexico, the whole Western Hemisphere was sold out. We imported cans from the Middle East and from Asia to cover the market. So what this has all done for us, and it's not aluminum cans now, there's other challenges that have popped up, in particular raw materials or packaging materials. And so it's become very important for us to be able to identify quickly through control towers of where are we seeing hot spots, where are we seeing consumer demand rising, and so therefore we need to be prepared to make more, and how are we performing against that? What inventories do we have in our warehouses? What carriers do we have available to actually ship this? Because getting trucks is a challenge at times, because again, all the other food and beverage companies are going through the exact same things we are. They're selling more of their products as well, so demand for trucks is going way up. The story of the backup of the docks, that affects us for the Keurig brewers. It's mainly due to, there's just unprecedented consumer demand. People are buying more stuff. They have more cash in their pocket and they're buying more stuff. And so there's double or treble the number of ships coming in, and our products are affected by that. So for us, then it becomes, we've got a plan for it. It takes longer when things get into Long Beach for them to get off the boat. And so maybe we need to be shipping more sooner. Maybe we need to be ordering more so that we have more in the pipeline to address it. But I could keep going on and on and on because it's a topic that I'm quite passionate about, but hopefully that gives you a sense.
No, I think one of the biggest problem is the reserves.
Yes.
Was measured assuming there is a free flow of people
yes.
and goods. But with pandemic and the war, that assumption is gone
yes.
out of the window. So you need to rebuild that metrics and
yes.
the reserves, etc. So it's not going to be easy.
Everybody was used to it's going to grow 3 to 5% per year. Everyone, up and down the supply chain, was perfectly set up and optimized for 3 to 5% growth. Well, then when all of a sudden you have a 8 or 10% growth year, And you go, okay, well, that was an anomaly. Well, no, it wasn't an anomaly. It happened again in 21. And as we reported our results at the beginning of, for Q1 of this year, our sales were up 12% for the year in our packaged beverage business, in the soda business. And so it's not letting up. And so we have a new reality that we now have to adjust to. And it requires a rethinking of our processes and a rethinking of some of our systems as a result. Yeah.
So one, to Joe, with ACA, the deadline of data exchange, the Gartner talks about 12 trends. Out of that, there's 3 groups. One of them is trust, right? So what are you doing in your business, especially coming to data exchange, becoming, is it June, July? When is it supposed, there is a deadline that ACA, Affordable Care Act, says that you have to be able to exchange of patient data, right? So.
Yeah, there's actually multiple requirements of exchanging patient data, and then there's other new laws, relatively new laws that have come into place to say you can't info block to patients. So there's multiple things, and then there's federal and then there's state level requirements and or incentives to what they call, or what we call, interoperate with other organizations, but more importantly the state and the federal government. It was highlighted really well during the pandemic that we have a huge opportunity not only to communicate and share information for patients that go from hospital system to hospital system, but to also share with the state and federal, specifically during the pandemic, the CDC, to understand what's going on and where's the need. One from case tracking to where to deploy how much volume of vaccine when that needed to happen. As a country, we didn't do great. So the opportunity is make sure that we have interoperability, both with our peers, but also with the public health agencies. At the same time, which me and my team have grown lots of gray hairs over it, there's other regulatory laws that have come into place that did put a burden on how quickly we need to meet some of the requirements from, let's say, info blocking. And what that is, if people don't know, is essentially 2 things. One, you have to make sure that everything that's documented is ostensibly available to the patient immediately and or on demand. The original systems weren't set up that way, so if anybody ever has to deal with technical debt in their business, that's one heck of a technical debt to pay down in a very quick amount of time. Interoperability for us, we were living in definitely the DFW, Metroplex, hospital districts, so we did a lot of interoperability with our initial installs of our Epic systems over the years, so sharing across our peers was never an issue. Sharing across the state and federal divide, that was pretty new, and the capabilities were, there was a pretty steep gradient between larger health systems, rural systems, smaller systems, and then even on the state and local, state, and federal side in terms of what their capabilities are and how you connect with them. I'm actually working very closely with our local and state public health agencies, and we're trying to normalize a lot of that, and we're actually on a work group at the federal level to try to do something very similar to what happened about a decade ago around incentives around adopting EMRs. We're trying to make sure that we have guidelines, standards, and incentives for folks not only to build the interoperability connections and capabilities, but those that are larger and already have them, how do we incentivize them to share rather than try to fund small and medium areas that have challenges to build those capabilities? So wait and see. We're crossing our fingers that some of that's going to get funded at the federal level and really be pushed down to kind of build that ecosystem, build that community, and hopefully we don't have another pandemic in our lifetimes, but if we do, I think we'll be a lot more prepared to more easily share apples to apples data with each other, with our local agencies, with our state agencies, and all the way up to the federal government to react quicker.
But while we are at it, some trust technologies. That what are the trust technology that you're using to improve this data exchange?
We're trying to use a lot of the, well, one, we've adopted FHIR from a interoperability or an interface technology. So, the HL7 interface engine's been around for, where's Krishna? He knows this better than me, but at least a decade, 2 decades. Now with the advent of Smart on Fire and some of the APIs, there's an ability to kind of stream and share more easily. It's not commonly adopted yet, and it's going to take some of us to really leverage that technology and those gateways to push vendors, push receivers to leverage that new capability, those new standards, and we're already doing that with interoperability to try to as much future-proof how we send and receive data from these major public health partners as well.
So, go ahead, please.
Good morning. Firstly, thank you. Really enjoyed listening to you all. I have a question for you all. Considering, as execs, I'm sure you all are in the consumer business. You probably have 1 million things you could do to make the consumer experience better. How do you prioritize which one to go hit first, or hit the top 10, if you may?
I can start. Mine's probably going to be very specific to my industry. Going back to the data, which cohorts of patients, typically cohorts based off of disease process, so it might be diabetes, it might be congestive heart failure. We see who's ostensibly hurting the most and not performing well, and then that's where we then dive in to say what are the interventions that evidence-based research proves has a better impact, what are the barriers for those patient populations to get those interventions or get that care, and then we try to solution around that. So you're right, there's a lot of need in my business, and I'm sure all of your business, but we're trying to do a data approach to make sure that we're keeping people healthy and hopefully saving lives.
I think for us, it really comes down to partnering with our marketing partners, in-house marketing folks, because they have a whole consumer insights team that is really looking at what is floating the boat of the average consumer who's buying product X from us. And then we work hand in hand with them to come up with solutions for how we address that need or how we enhance the experience for the consumer with it. Not a very sexy answer, but it's the way it is.
So in the aviation space, the big driver for us is safety and security. And a lot of times when we talk about EHS, people think of EHS as an internal function, like are we keeping our people safe? But in our case, it's safety not only of the employees, but the assets that the high net worth individuals are trusting to us. So if you are at the ramp or at the hangar, the biggest thing that can happen is, we damage your plane, right? That's a huge financial issue. The employees is another one, their safety and security. So we are using a combination of access and milestone cameras where they can do the heat sensors and they can tell you in real time if the planes are coming closer or not, right? So for us, we don't explicitly think of that as a customer experience, but at the end of the day, it does translate to a customer experience, because if safety of either the customer or the employee gets at risk, that customer is never going to come back. So I think for us, safety has to be the #1 issue.
Yes.
Okay. I think it was great listening to all of three, John, Joe, Anurag, fantastic. I have a very tricky question for all three eminent speakers. So, CIO role is really tough, because earlier it is some data processing and all that. Now from the attendance capturing to CEO desk, everything is CIO. And again, so much of technology movement on right, left, everywhere. So how you make a fine balance between keeping your stakeholder happy and keeping the lights on?
Yeah, I think, so I'll go first, I guess. That's probably one of the toughest things to do, right? Because it's very easy to, I mean, the less challenging side or the less fraught side would be, I'm going to make sure nothing ever fails, right? And I'm going to invest everything toward that and only do a limited amount of other things where there's more risk associated, introducing new capabilities. And so for us, what that's looked like, because really you want to flip the balance the other way. You want the majority of your time in an ideal world building new capabilities that are going to differentiate you in the marketplace. And as little as possible focus toward what do I have to do to keep the lights on and keep the machine running. And so for us, that's really focused us toward how do we automate to a greater extent? How do we automate not only the operation of the equipment, but automate the monitoring of that equipment so that we get alerts? We have to put less bodies against it, so we have fewer people involved with operations. We're not where we need to be yet on that, or where I should say where I want us to be on that. And so that's going to be a multi-year journey, but that's the direction we're going, is that, because I want to have the majority of our time spent building new capabilities that are, like I said, going to enhance us in the marketplace.
Yeah, Anurag?
From my perspective, you know, CIO is always an acronym for your career is over. So, you know, CIOs don't last more than 12 to 18 months. So the big shift that I feel has to be done is you have to speak the language of the business. What I mean is the same digital use case that may work for a hospital or a consumer products company may not work for us. The second thing that I have personally taken the shift is, you know, keep the lights on is never rewarded. That's the part of doing the business. So let's make sure our vendors and partners can help us immensely in that. The other thing is we need to do a better job educating and raising the awareness that, you know, one of these days this fiber line will be cut by not us, by someone else in the field. So let's be okay working on a pencil paper method. I think people have come to expect a very high level expectation because they see Microsoft and Apple, but they're unaware of the billions of dollars that go behind them. So I think we have to make sure people understand the cost and the outcome. But to John's point, if we don't deliver capabilities at the 90-day period, I think we'll soon be outsourced as well. So I think maybe that fear is a good one because it forces us to be at the edge there and deliver something which is meaningful.
Yeah, I agree with both these gentlemen. The IT has become a utility or commodity, like turning on the faucet and expecting the water to come out every single time, or flipping a light switch and that light comes on every single time. You know, 10 plus years ago, that wasn't the case. You'd be doing really good if you were 98% uptime. That's not the case anymore. And in my use case, if we have the busiest single location in ED, or our emergency department in the nation, we get lots of folks come through there critically ill. If our network goes down and our clinicians don't have access to the key data and the ability and the safeguards and the guardrails to treat them, people can get seriously hurt. So KTLO, or keep the lights on, it's not an option to ever skimp or refocus away from that for us. So that leaves a finite capacity for projects of new things. And I'll tell you, just like both of these gentlemen said, the appetite for technology and new capabilities and the expectation of how quickly, how much it costs and what it takes to support is very much underappreciated. So a vast majority of my job is the reality check in the C-suite, which is not the sexiest part of the role, to tell people, I'm not there to tell them no, I'm just tell them this is the reality, this is what it costs, this is how long it takes, and if you go over that capacity, one of two things will happen. You'll either start eroding KTLO and stuff that you rely on, or you burn people out and they leave, and then you have even less capacity to do things new. So definitely not the sexiest part, but it's a big part of our roles. And if career is over, what'd you say, 20 months? I'm on borrowed time, that means.
Yeah, even I disagree with that. You all will have a very, very super career, I think. So.
Hey, I'm Satish Paluseri. So, Anurag, you seem to be using Microsoft Azure and Databricks. right? And John, you're using Snowflake and Google, right? So looks like I totally understand why you use the matured and safe, secure companies. But do you have any room to adopt the young technology companies that are solving the next bigger problems, but they are not there yet? I ask this question because I'm an angel investor, and most of the founders of the companies I invested have hard time in reaching out to the big companies to make a point saying that, you know, give us a chance to make a case. So I just want to know your channels, you know, where you can accept them.
So maybe I'll go first. So I would say, you know, Microsoft and the Salesforces, they are there for a reason, but there's a place for all the, I call the startup mindset. And, you know, we are working with a company called FlightBridge, which is a small company, which has already proven integrations with the NetJets of the world and our POS. I think the real driver here is the time to market, right? For us, that's critical. The other thing is, we are also disenchanted by all the sales speech that we get from the big companies and the PowerPoints. So for me, I think if a smaller organization can really focus and commit to having the resources and drive those use cases, I'm all eyes and ears. And I'm part of a private equity fund as well, and we work with companies of all shapes and sizes, because what we have seen is the larger firms, we may be the small fish for them. So we want to engage with a partner for whom we are a big fish, right? So I would say we don't want to let go of the Microsofts of the world for a reason, but we also want to partner with the smaller firms just for the time to market issues.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in a slightly different spot. I think it's hard for me to take a chance on a really small firm, like just full stop, right? Like, because it becomes, you know, am I going to bet my career on some small firm? And, you know, because we have 246 locations around North America. And so if I deploy something out to 246 locations, it's going to cost, even a small company, it's going to cost a lot of money to do that. I need to make sure that they are financially stable and viable, that I tend to be, I want to be a fast follower versus I don't feel a need to be on the bleeding edge of things. You know, a lot of topics like blockchain, that sort of thing, it's a solution chasing a problem, in my opinion, at least in the corporate world, right? It's not to say that there's not solutions at the, you know, metaverse, again, solution chasing a problem in the corporate world. In marketing, sure, but outside of marketing, it doesn't, it's 10 plus years out, easy. And so I think what I think the challenge for a small firm really is be able to talk to the value that's being generated by the product. If they can show clear demonstrable value that it's going to return to me, because, you know, we have productivity targets every year, right? Because we're in hyperinflation now relative to where we've been, but every year we have 2-3 points of inflation that are going to hit us on wages, and our software providers, et cetera. Well, I don't get a 2-3% boost in my budget every year. So being able to bring in products that are going to help me to run IT more efficiently, or add value to KDP's overall business that are going to offset those productivity things, that is a pitch that I would listen to. Like, hey, here's where we've returned, and I don't want like we think it will. This is, we've proven it somewhere else kind of thing, and that is definitely something I would be interested in seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe?
So I agree with a lot of what John said. Same reasons as I talked about before. We're pretty risk averse for the big infrastructure items, so we're going to go with the tried and true. We're either going to be a close follower or even a slow follower for that infrastructure. I think where a lot of the opportunity in my industry is use cases that are very specific or very immature markets outside of the core infrastructure or technology. So we've taken on risk in those areas because the alternative is either very manual or very immature. But for core infrastructure, I agree with you. We stay very risk averse because the upside versus the downside is so tremendous versus what the upside would be. Now again, those niche use cases or other niche sectors within our healthcare industry, they're very immature. There's still a lot of opportunity to innovate and add value, and we're usually very open ears for those opportunities.
I have a question. My name is Ranjit Lal. First of all, thanks Chamber for organizing this event. Thanks to Susan and Gary for the last minute push to make me attend here. Time well spent. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the speakers. Great discussions, and really, really appreciate your time. So my question is in reference to one of the points that Anurag made on the frictionless experience. That before you went ahead executing on that strategy, you would have done something like a customer journey. Want to understand how you went ahead from an IT standpoint supporting that journey, conducting that analysis of customer persona identification as well as journey mapping.
Yeah, I would say, I think we try to leapfrog this whole very structured mindset, and I come from a consulting background where everything has to follow a certain structure. What I would say is we knew that we were so much below the line of expectations of the customer that I think we could go on a rampage 6 months to do these customer journey mappings. I think we took a little bit different approach. We said, we know enough about our customer and some of the pain that our field staff tells us because they hear it on a daily basis. Let's just deliver the MVP of customer experience, and then we can do Rev 2 and Rev 3 using some customer journeys. The challenge is for an organization that is bleeding or so far behind around customer, we don't want this scientific customer journeys to delay us further. That's where I feel, compared to enterprise IT like ERPs, where things have to tick and tie day one, I think we are fully acknowledging we'll be 60% right in a good way on day one, and that's good enough for now. So we did engage some partners like Droga5 and others to do the customer journey, but I feel it's such a convoluted process at the end of the day that I think we lose the basics, what make the difference to the customer moments. And I feel our customer staff, the CSRs can tell us enough. So let's get started and go from there. I'm not discounting the value of going through customer journeys, but it's just in our life cycle, we are so far behind that any little tweak, like even if we can give them notifications when the plane lands and the catering is done, that's like moving the mountain. Now, that may not seem like if you go to a Nordstrom, that's a big deal, but for our customer, that is a big deal. So I think it's a little bit of a different approach there.
Let's give a round of applause to these amazing CIOs. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your insight.